it's Dr. Anthony Chaffee. I'm a neurosurgical resident practicing in Perth, Australia, and also do work in functional medicine and metabolic health. And that's just been something that's been important to me my whole life through athletics and academia, and something that thankfully I've been able to bring to other people as well. Well, I think the principles were always the same. I always wanted to keep fit. I was always very active. I always enjoyed being physically fit. I always felt better, even just walking around, just my body feeling primed and ready to go. That made me feel better. And then trying to eat right, whatever that meant at the time. I always tried to do that. I always tried to avoid things that I knew were bad. When I thought that fat was bad for me, I would try to avoid fat. And then sometimes I'd eat it and go like, oh, what did I do? And give myself a guilt trip, or maybe even make myself feel uncomfortable, or even have an upset stomach. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I ate that. But I would try to avoid things like that, or like sugar, or alcohol. I wasn't a big drinker. I never drank during the rugby season, for instance, just because of the health effects that it had. And so the principles are still the same. I don't want to do things that are bad for me. I like being healthy. I like feeling my best. My views on what that means and how to get there have changed, and that's why I've eliminated all the different foods that I don't eat anymore, all the things that I don't consider food anymore. And I just focus on what food is to our species, which I think is just a pure meat-based diet. No, I was that kid that just absolutely hated vegetables, hated peas, hated broccoli. My mom had to smother things in cheese sauce for me to get to eat them, and then I generally just use the piece of broccoli as like a spoon just to eat the cheese, and then try to eat as little of the broccoli as possible, because I just hated it. It was just awful, and so no, I never toyed with that. I never thought that was a good idea. But honestly, I watched a movie, and it showed inside of a slaughterhouse and things like that. And it was pretty shaking to me as I think I was like around 12 at the time. It was a movie called Faces of Death, which sounds pretty gross, but it was made by a pathologist who sees dead bodies and does autopsies, and he sort of realized that people don't have a connection with that anymore, and they don't really understand what that means anymore. We're so separate from it, from our food supply. Animals have to die, plants have to die, animals have to die to grow plants, and we're so disconnected from that, we forget what that is. And so we said that this is important for people to sort of see this, and it's all of its reality. And it was pretty shocking for a young boy to see. And I think at that point there was a couple of days where I was just like, oh my goodness, I don't want anything to do with that. And that sort of lasted about a day. And then I'm like, well, that's and then I was like, well, and but I do feel for animals, and I do feel for having to kill them and eat them. I mean, that for something. But that's the tragedy of life, is that all animal life are heterotrophs, and even non-animal life can be heterotrophs as well, like fungus and others. That means that something has to die for us to live, and that is a tragic reality, but it is reality, and you ignore that at your own peril. And so I focus on how can I ensure that animal had a really good life and a very clean death. And that's how I can do the best that I can to meet my sort of ethical and moral demands. And people don't realize that you have to kill 25 times the amount of sentient animals just to grow 1 pound of plant-based protein than animal-based protein. And so you're killing a lot of animals, and they're not going clean. It's not like a pneumatic hammer where it's bang and they drop. They're getting shot in the side, and they're writhing around and dying slowly, and then nothing eats them, because who needs 1,000 pounds of kangaroo in the middle of the night? No one does. So it's I think that's a better way of doing it. And and that's including all the chickens and things like that we eat. If we were just eating large ruminant animals, that number would be very different. It'd be, hundreds of times different. Because a cow will feed a person for a year, probably more, depending on the size of the person. Where you have to eat maybe half a chicken a day for some people, or a full chicken a day for me, or someone else. And so if you were just focusing on those larger ruminant animals, you'd actually be harming less creatures. And so I actually think about this. I don't just look at it on a surface level and just go, oh, hurting animals is bad. I actually think about it and say, okay, well, what happens next? And then what happens next? And then what happens next? Because you have to replace that animal with something else. Okay, you replace it with a plant. And how did you get that plant? Well, animals had to die. More animals had to die. More animals had to suffer. The environment had to be destroyed. You had to dump a bunch of chemicals and pollutants and pesticides and chemical runoff getting into the groundwater, which kills more animals. So you have to think past step one. You can't just look at things superficially. And so that's always been my mindset and how I try to approach things. If they want to be as healthy as they can be, yeah, if they want to just be, healthy and be fit and be nice, you can eat other things, but you won't be as healthy as you could be. It's just about, it's about optimization. That's what just the meat and water is. That's the optimal. And because that is what we evolved on. And so we are biologically adapted to get everything we need from meat in the proportion that we need it. We don't have any extra fluff or any toxins that our body can't deal with properly. We are geared up to eat meat. And so when you eat outside of that, you're either not getting as much nutrition, and so that's not as good, or you're getting things that actually cause direct harm along with the nutrients that they provide, which are subpar nutrients anyway. So you're not optimizing your health. And so, I played high level sports my whole life, only, 5+ years of that were as a carnivore. And I was able to compete at a very high level. I was an All-American and eating junk food, like when I was on an All-American tour with the national team in New Zealand, we for rugby, like we ate at McDonald's twice a day, every day, and we had soda and fries and burgers every day. And I just can't even imagine what I would have been like if I was only eating meat. I would just have a big stack of beef patties and that. I just would have been killing people. I was already killing people, but it would have just been a slaughter if I had been doing that. So you can do it. You can absolutely do it, but you will never do it as well or as easily or to the extent as you can unless you're eating optimally, which I think, at least this evidence shows, is just a high fat meat and water diet. Just because I like feeling good. For me personally, I like feeling good. I want to, live a nice, long, healthy life. I don't want to be plagued with all the chronic disease, illness, and pain that most people are plagued with. And as a doctor, this is what I see every day. This is something I've been very empathetic to my whole life. I've always, I don't know why, but I've just, where it came from, I've just always had a very deep empathy for people. I've always cared about people and cared about if they're hurting or not, and if they're sick or not, and wanting to help them if I could. And so, when people are sick and they're hurt, like, that bothers me. And so I want to help them. And, this is something that I've seen can really, really help people. It's very, very simple. It may not be easy for people to change and radically overhaul their diet, but it is simple. It is straightforward. You don't eat these things, you will not get these problems. It is very straightforward. And so, that's what I want for people. I want people to be able to take back their own health, not be dependent on doctors, not be dependent on medications, not be dependent on pharmaceutical companies and people just trying to sell them just one thing after the other. Like, look at all the commercials nowadays. It's all geared towards this, like, you feel awful, you feel terrible. Here's a pill, here's a product, here's something. And people are just desperate to just do something so that they just feel normal. And all they have to do is just eat properly. and that all happens on its own. And so that's something that's very important to me, because it's something that it's so empowering that people can just do, and then they're in control of their life, they're in control of their health, and no one can take that away from them. Yeah, it does come up, and quite a lot of time people will see me, and I'm generally the one of the few in shape doctors at the hospital. And so, there's some people who make some joke about it's like, oh, look at muscles over here or something like that. And but then they'll ask me like, oh, what do you do? I want to get on your program. What are you eating? What are you this? I'm like, well, this is what I do. And or if something, if they ask me more seriously, is there anything I can do? Is there something that can be done? I don't feel that it's ethical to just withhold information that I think would help them. That's literally my job as a doctor, is to try to advise people and help them get better and feel better. And so, you have patients that are get a new diagnosis of cancer, and they say, besides, we say, we've done surgery, now you're going to get chemo, you're going to get radiation. And they say, well, is there anything else that I can do? Is there anything I can do to help this and to affect this? And it's really important to them to be a part of this and be a part of their own solution, and be able to help in their own struggle, because it is them struggling. And when you tell them, no, just do whatever you want, just enjoy your life, that I understand the sentiment and why doctors do that. They think like, just enjoy your life. Nothing's holding you back. Just go and enjoy yourself. What you're telling them is that there's nothing you can do. There is no hope. You're going to die no matter what. And that is absolutely depressing and devastating to patients. I see it in their eyes all the time. And I hear people talking about like, well, why would you tell them to eat X, Y, and Z? Just they're going to die. Just let them eat whatever they want, enjoy themselves. It's like, or you can tell them to eat the right thing. You can give them some hope. You can give them something to work towards, and maybe they survive, and maybe they survive longer, at least, and they have more time with their family, and they're able to do more activities and actually have a life. Like you're signing them up for a death sentence. Like, that's the same thing. Just saying, it's just like, well, you're going to die anyway, so just do a bunch of drugs. Who cares? Well, you're going to speed the process up, and you're going to waste what little time you have. I literally just did a series of presentations today in my neurosurgical department, arguing for using metabolic therapies and calorie-restricted ketogenic diet in treatment of our brain cancer, glioblastoma brain cancers. And I presented dozens of studies and dozens of case reports. So many of these things had patients that were on fifth-line treatment. The tumor kept recurring, and then they go on a calorie-restricted ketogenic diet, and all of a sudden it stops and actually regresses without other treatment. And then a couple of the patients just said, oh, I can't really do this. It's so restrictive. They came off it. Tumor came back right away. They died within the year. And that's terrible to see. So that's something that I think is important. When I know for a fact that we've actually known for 100 years from Nobel Prize winner Otto Warburg's work back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that cancers require 400 times the amount of glucose that normal cells do. And simply by limiting the amount of glucose available to them, you limit their growth potential. How can you ethically not tell a patient that? How can you tell, oh, just eat the candy bar, just eat the bread, you enjoy it, it's nummy, that's fine. That's what's important, is the nummy. Well, I'm sorry, feeding the cancer and putting gas on the fire is what's important there. And the fact of the matter is that I don't think these people have necessarily tried to counsel patients, because I don't think they realize just how much patients want that information. Anytime that I've told someone that, they're like, wait, what, really? So just no carb. Well, I'm just going to get the hell. They want nothing to do with carbohydrates. You tell them that that carbohydrates feed cancer, and they can require 400 times the amount of blood sugar. They're just like, oh my God, I'm never eating bread again. They are the ones saying that. I just tell them, here's a fact. And they make the decision, well, I'm not touching that ever again. it's actually pretty straightforward. When you're looking for a population sample to do a study, and you say, well, are they going to be compliant? Are they going to stick with it? Are they going to do the protocol as requested? Well, it depends on your motivation. And dying of cancer is a pretty big motivator. And so you find there's actually very, very motivated patients to just say, well, that's it. And you talk to people and they say, and all of a sudden their family's like, all right, well, we're throwing out all the bread. We're going to get rid of all the potatoes. We're going to do this. And they're all with it. They're like, we're going to do this with you and we're going to help you. I have yet to see anyone say like, screw that, I want pizza. I've never, ever, not once heard someone say that. And so I think that it's, I think that it's a lot easier than people would make it out to be. Yeah, no, it was. Yeah, we're going forward with the study. Yeah. So I got approval and we're going to go ahead and design a study to treat this. There's already been a number of studies. There's been a randomized controlled trial with 20 patients. Small sample size. It's difficult to do. You need to get a lot, but we get a number of these patients a day. We're a major center in Australia, so it's we have a large burden of brain tumors, and so this is something that I think we can rack up numbers pretty significantly, and hopefully get to a large, well-powered study and be able to actually really show something very significant. And I think that if we can do that, that will really change the way people look at cancer and look at nutrition. And there are already major centers around the world that use this as a treatment. Cedars-Sinai Hospital is a very, very famous hospital in the US, and it already uses metabolic therapies for their cancer patients and brain cancer patients already. That's one of the case series that I presented was the Cedars-Sinai case series. And a number of these patients, all of whom were still alive, except the 2 that came off the ketogenic diet. And unfortunately, they succumbed. It's very sad, but we have on the MRIs, this is just shrinking back. A number of patients that just decided to come off chemo and radiation because it wasn't working, and then they go on to that, or they go on to even more restrictive, like a Paleolithic ketogenic diet, which is really just a carnivore diet, because it's just like, you're not going to eat anything that didn't exist 50,000 years ago. Right. And so what were we eating 50,000 years ago? Basically meat. And so when those populations got onto that specific diet, they actually did quite a lot better. So there's one lady that's 6.5 years on, with no disease progression, no symptoms, with a brain tumor that was very symptomatic, that was growing aggressively when she was getting chemo and radiation. And now she's symptom-free, progression-free, and she has not had chemo and radiation since she stopped it after the first 5 months. She's only been addressing this with diet, and it's just stopped cold, And there's a number of cases like that. A number of cases. The case series in Cedars-Sinai concluded that this was this gave a survival advantage and symptom control, and improve people's lives better than the control. And it's control against the standard of care already, which is very well established what that looks like. And then there's another case series in Arizona, had another 16 patients with glioblastoma, which is like the most aggressive form of cancer, and certainly brain cancer that there is. And so they found as well that adding on these metabolic therapies and addressing the energy supply fuel source of these cancers conferred a significant benefit in morbidity and mortality. To me, diet is probably the pinnacle. I think everything else stems from your diet, because that is literally the fuel and the substance that you of your body. You're putting things that are in your body that are substandard. Your body is going to be made out of substandard materials, and your inner workings are going to get chewed up. So I think it starts with diet, and I think everything else is then a product of your diet. The exercise, you say like, oh, you have to exercise. Like, well, yes, that's good, but you can't outrun a bad diet. And if you have a really good diet, then the exercise that you do, you can work harder, you can go longer, you'll recover better, and you'll get more out of it. So you put in the same amount of effort, you do the same amount of work as person Y, and you're going to get more out of it than they will, because you have better fuel in your body, your body's working more optimally. So I think it definitely starts with that. And your hormones are going to be better, your biochemistry is going to be better, your sleep's going to be better. So all these things stem from a proper diet. And then after that, definitely get out and exercise, be active. We are meant to move. We are meant to do things with our body. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to go to a gym. That doesn't necessarily mean you just have to just run endlessly, but do something, move your body and get out and just be active and challenge yourself. People don't realize just how engaging it is actually challenge your body and challenge your muscular, and then build up like actual proper fitness where your body is just humming like just a solid machine, and you just feel amazing while you're doing that, and then at every other second of the day. And also sleep is very, very important. It's something that I sorely miss, and that every single day I recognize exactly how important it is, because I don't ever get it. And so it's something that I would absolutely love to have in my life. I think that is definitely one of the more important things. I think it's probably a strong number 2. And then exercise, being active and physical, will probably be number 3. Number 4, good, well, gosh, it's hard to know where to put these things, but, good relations with your friends and your family obviously are up there. That's also 2. Everything's 2. Diet is 1, everything else is 2. And so, just having good relations and social connections with your family and friends, and really building those bonds is so important. It's beyond important. Any sort of trial on health and longevity, those social supports, those social connections means so much. When you have people that are like living in the same house with 4 generations, their family, and everyone's so close, they are happier, they are more fulfilled, they live longer, they live healthier lives. And I think that is a serious meaning of life, is that family connection and having those strong bonds with your families and friends. And then good 5. I know, get a dog. That's probably a good one too. Well, I mean, I just jumped headfirst into it myself, and I found that worked great. I don't think there's any bad time to stop eating poison. I think that you just have this in your life and it's not good for you. You recognize it's not good for you, you stop it. And so, if you're going and they're like, well, I guess this is good for me, I should do it. You just do what you do. But as soon as you sort of like, okay, this is bad, and you see hard evidence, like this is bad for me, this is causing harm to me, to me, I wouldn't want to just, well, I'll just slowly taper that off. That's like, if you're going to slowly stop smoking, like you either stop smoking or you don't. You have to strike while the iron's hot. And if you have that in your head, like I need to stop smoking, like that's it, today's the day, then you'll have a better chance at it, getting through that addiction. And some foods are addictive, certainly sugar is. But there's also that you're just used to it, and this is what you've done your whole life, and you can always convince yourself, oh, is it really that bad for me? I'm sure it's bad, but is it that bad? Yes, it is that bad. And just try coming off of it, and you'll see, and you'll look at how healthy you are and how great you feel, and you'll realize that you've actually felt miserable your whole life, and you didn't even realize it because you just thought it was normal. It's not normal. It's really bad, actually. And people say, I talk to, it's like, well, I would try, but I don't really have any health issues. So I actually feel pretty good. I don't feel like I need to do it. Like, right, compared to yourself, but you don't actually realize how bad you actually feel. It's kind of crazy. But when I stopped eating all that stuff, within 2 weeks, all of a sudden, I just felt like a different breed of human. And I literally, and I probably was in a way, because my body's working so differently to everybody else. And I look back on how I felt my whole life, and I just put it in context, and I just realized that I felt awful my whole life until, right then. And so I think it's easier to do that. I think it's easier to just cut it all out. And if you say like, okay, well, I'll slowly sort of push this stuff away, and I'll eat through the stuff in my fridge. Like, oh, I don't want to waste it. It's like, you don't want to waste, poison? Like, really? Like, okay. It's like, well, I bought all this rat poison and I don't want to waste it. We ran out of rats, so I'll eat it myself. I'd rather not myself. And when I talk to people about trying it, far and away, most often when they're successful is when they just do it right then, and they just throw everything out their house. They just give it to their neighbors that they don't like that much. It's like, you eat the poison, and and then they just buy meat, and that's it. And it's a lot easier that way. Otherwise, you're like a guy who's quitting smoking for 20 years, or who's been on methadone for a decade and is only going up in his dose. And it's like, I thought you were supposed to come down with that. That was the entire point. It's like, oh, I'm trying. It's like, are you though? You just have to stop. And so, it's not like being extremely addicted to certain substances like benzodiazepines or alcohol. Whereas if you actually withdraw too hard, you can actually have seizures, and that's actually life threatening. Carbs aren't like that. Sugars aren't like that. Spinach isn't like that. You can come off this stuff. And I think that when you're quitting things, most of the studies show that just cold turkey is the way to go. There's some people, it will work better the other way, but I think for the majority of people, it's best to just come off straight away.